my next guest, great friend of the show, very excited to have her here just before the release of her new book, The Woman at 72 Derry Lane. Please welcome to the Elaine Show couch, panel, table discussion, Carmel Harrington. Hello.
So excited to be here.
Well, it's just super to have you in here. It's Friday, so we're you know, it's all about nice things and fun things, but we're conscious we have our sort of tissues at the ready.
Yeah.
Because you're known as the queen of emotional writing.
I am. I have a bit of a reputation, in fairness, Ruth, I do, yeah.
Are you like the equivalent of a Richard Curtis? He's the guy that writes the likes of the Notting Hill movies and Love Actually. Are you like that? You like to elicit the tears out of people?
I do. Actually, you know what? That wouldn't be an unfair comparison. I would write with humour as well, and he would do a lot of humour in his books.
Yeah.
So certainly, yeah, there's a lot of humour, so I will make you use those tissues for laughter as well.
Okay.
Just to be sure.
Yeah.
but I have had, but every single book I've written, I have kind of, the most kind of feedback I get from readers is, oh, you made me cry. And I never quite know what to say to that. So it's kind of like, sorry. Thanks. Thanks. Did you enjoy it? But this time we thought we'd be really good. So we're actually giving like these little cute little tissues with the book graphic on them with the book, which is kind of cool.
Great idea. And I suppose the idea, you know, at this stage you're coming into this is your 5th book now. But I think it's worth mentioning, your very first book you self-published.
I did.
Is that a total pain in the behind to do? Yes. And this is what people have to do, isn't it?
It is. Well, I actually did that before it had become popular to self-publish.
Oh.
So it was a different time. And I did that because I'm just wicked, well, Caroline will tell you this, but I'm wicked impatient. I have not got a single patient bone in my body. And when I wrote that book, I looked at the market and I knew that there was a slush pile with every publisher. And I thought, well, that's not going to work for me. So I self-published it as an ebook only, and it did really well. It went to #1 in the ebook charts. And I got picked up by HarperCollins.
Did you have to hustle a lot to get people to read it? Because, you know, how do you stand out amongst... You just stood out for being a great book.
Well, I don't know. I think there was a number of things that happened. I was actually quite shy about it. And when I wrote that, I told nobody. And the gas thing was a friend actually found it on iTunes, and she saw it was by Carmel Harrington, and she thought, there's not that many Carmel Harringtons, you know. And so she actually rang me and said, is this you? And I was like, yeah. And I was really quite shy about it, but it just seemed to get legs. It was quite an emotional read, actually, that first book. Yeah. And it went into people's hearts. So a lot of people bought it and downloaded it. It was cheap as well. It was only a couple of quid. So.
Oh, OK, so it's a kind of almost an introductory offer. And then here you are now. And in fact, your last book, your 4th book, if I have it right, it got to the top 5 in the Irish Times bestsellers list. That was the one, The Things I Should Have Told You?
It did. That was it. That book, actually, yeah, I was super proud of that book. It did very well. And
a book award nomination?
Yeah, it was shortlisted for the Irish Book Awards. Thank you, Caroline.
No problem. I'm the manager. I need a job.
But yeah, so it did really well, and it was a lovely book to write, actually. That one I really enjoyed. Yeah. This one is a bit different. The Woman at 72 Derry Lane is darker, I think. There's more twists in it. But yeah, there's some...
I have started reading it, but I didn't want to get to the end before because I expect there'll be some, like, wailing, gnashing, when the scar would be everywhere, and I don't want to do that on the telly. Tell us a little bit about it, because I like the dynamic of it's 2 trapped women, in a sense.
It is, and really, that's really what it's about. The tagline on the book is behind closed doors. Everybody has a secret to keep. And I was really quite fascinated by that. And I wanted to look at reasons that people could be trapped in their own homes, but for very different reasons. And I really wanted to write about women at different stages in their life. So Ria is almost 60. And she's agoraphobic. So she is a prisoner in our home. And then next door to her, on the other side of this semi-detached Victorian houses on Derry Lane, this fictitious road, is Stella. And she's young, married to the gorgeous Matt, successful, affluent couple. But she's also trapped in her home, but this time by fear, because things are not as they seem with her husband.
And they're both of their situations are where they're capitulating into getting into a worse and worse situation.
They are.
And then
things
well, I don't know what happens after that, because I waited.
Yeah, well, it's... Do you know what
But don't tell us, obviously. People are like, don't tell us the ending.
No spoilers, no spoilers at all. There's a lot of twists in it. So to get to the end, you know, you're going to be brought down a couple of little alleyways along the way. But really, to understand both characters and how they've ended up like that, we have to kind of peel back and go back in time and find out what happened to them and in their past. Because really, they haven't just all of a sudden one has not just all of a sudden ended up in a bad marriage, the other ended up agoraphobic. So it took time for that to happen. And
what I'm curious about is I often hear that writers have to sort of sequester themselves away and like be by themselves for the longest time. And I guess I imagined that you would not be in as much contact with people, and yet at the same time you need real life experience and you need to maybe take inspiration. Do you take inspiration from people you know those that you do get to see when you're not trapped writing?
Yeah, well, do you know what? Thankfully, really, a lot of the themes in this book are quite dark, and I don't know anyone personally, and I haven't suffered them myself, but I did do a lot of research. So I reached out for people who might be agoraphobic, and certainly, going to Women's Aid, there are a lot of women who've had domestic violence in their marriages. So it wasn't too hard to find people to talk to. So I did a huge amount of research, and that was actually quite difficult and very upsetting. And for those scenes in the book, I did have to take myself away from home because I've young children, and I couldn't go there and then be mummy like
I
5
get
minutes
you,
later.
yeah.
So I had to kind of disappear. So I find that a lot now. I write the scenes I can write, the happier scenes I can write at home, and then when I get a bit kind of darker and more serious, I have to kind of disappear for a
So
week
would
or
you do you go to the garden shed? Do you rent a hotel room for a few days?
Done it all. I've tried.
Do you have a gaff in the south of France that we should all know about?
If this book gets to #1 for like 20 weeks in a row,
Let's focus on the positivity here.
Yeah.
When this book
Yes.
gets to #1.
then I'll be going to the south of France. No, do you know where I go? There's a place in Monaghan, Tyrone Guthrie Centre, and it's a writer's residency, and it's owned by the Arts Council. It was donated by this wonderful gentleman, Tyrone Guthrie, and I go there, and I've just come back from there actually, and I've just spent a week there writing. And it's great. Somewhere like that, it's completely silent. Like there's just literally, you could hear a pin drop. But it's a wonderful environment. It's very creative, a lovely energy there. And I get lots of words done at places like that.
People often say, I'm going to write a book, and other people say, everyone has a book in them.
Yes.
Do you think that's true? I think it's a bit glib of people to say, I'm going to
Yes.
write a book. I used to say for years, I'm going to write a book. Yeah. My family even got sick of me saying, I'm going to write a book. They're like, Ruth, where's this book? Of course I'm not going to write a book because I'm a lazy dolt. What do people need to do? For people who say, I have a book in me, that'd be a great story, you have a book in you, what do you need to do?
I think everybody has a story in them. I do believe that everybody has a story. I don't believe everyone has a book in them because it does take dedication. Having words and being able to tell a great story, that's the start. But being able to translate that from your head and from your mouth onto paper and put it in a format that's pleasing for the reader, that makes them want to read the story, it takes a little bit of work.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying nobody, I think everybody can do that if they want to, but you might need to spend a bit of time.
It's not as easy as it sounds, yeah.
It's a muscle. I always say that. Writing is like any other skill, and you get better. And definitely my writing has come on.
Yeah.
It's so different compared to that first book you mentioned, Beyond Grace's Rainbow.
What's jumped out at me that I find fascinating is that you're now writing this novel in conjunction with the show Cold Feet, the TV show. It was massive in the 90s.
Yes.
Who's that Nordy guy with the beard and the chin that I always think of?
James Nesbitt.
Yeah. It was a real kind of a starting ground for a lot of those actors. So ITV commissioned you to write it, but you had to audition. I didn't know writers had to audition.
It felt like that. Like really, what it was that my agent contacted me and said, "Look, there's Cold Feet, the TV show, want to fill in the missing years because the show ended in 2003 and came back in 2016. So they wanted to fill in that kind of missing 13 years, and they needed an author to do it. So she said, "Do you fancy having a go?" And I kind of said for the crack, yes, because I really didn't think they'd go for
the crack.
Yeah,
I love this though. It's like fan
The fact that
fiction.
you're Irish as well was going against you,
That's
you know?
what I thought.
Yeah.
I was sure that, because it's set in Manchester, so I thought they'll get a nice northern lass or lad and that'll be it. But I kind of got through the first stage where they read that book last year that did quite well, thankfully. They read things and they liked it. So I was asked to write a 4,000-word sample piece. But they gave me there was no plot given to me. It was like, just...
We had to start from scratch, and
whatever you
make
like.
up something. Well,
So I spent a lot of time. I was saying this to Caroline earlier. I didn't just throw something out. I spent time at it, and I kind of knew it could be a career-changing 4,000 words. And basically, there was a number of samples sent to Mike Bullen and the ITV team, along with mine. But he has told me, because I've got to meet Mike, he's such a lovely man, but he said to me, he read mine, was the first one he read, and he said, "This is it, I don't need to read anymore."
Great.
Cool. Amazing.
Do you then sit down and write with him, or do you get carte blanche to...
No, he's handed it over to me. I thought he phrased it really well, Ruth. What he said was that these characters are my babies, and I've now sent them to Ireland to their foster mammy, and their Irish mammy is going to look after them. And what I said to him was, I'm going to do my very best not to drop one or break one.
Oh,
And I'll send them back to him.
no dropping babies on all.
I think it's the first time that's ever been done, as far as I'm aware, is it? Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah,
What
it's
about then
amazing.
the next book? This one is published, ready to rock. We'll let you know the launch
Yes.
details of that. But then the next book, besides from the Cold Feet one,
That's September, the Cold Feet one.
have
is
you a few more
September.
tucked away in the planning stages?
Yes. I've kind of just been offered a contract for the next two, so 2018 and 2019 are kind of now looked after.
Amazing.
You're so lazy, Carmel. Do you know what I mean?
Shame to my life sitting next to you.
Well,
I feel so
you know
unmotivated.
what?
2 kids.
The good news is we love giving away prizes here on The Elaine Show, and the lovely Carmel has given us 4 signed copies of her new book, The Woman at 72 Derry Lane, and we are going to give those away. So all you need to do is go over to the Elaine Facebook page to enter that competition. Best luck. I know it's been officially, formally launched next week because you're from Wexford, 1 in Wexford and 1 in Dublin, so we'll have all our fingers and toes crossed for you for that.
Absolutely.
And go to the Facebook page and you can see there how you can win yourself a signed copy of the book.